Welcome, Nick Dunn, Animal Care Manager at Wellington Zoo. It's fantastic to have you along. Really appreciate hosting us at the zoo a couple of weeks ago, and we'll play that video in just a moment, and really appreciate your time this afternoon. So thank you, Nick, and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Curious Conversations for 2024, and welcome everybody. We've still got some people coming in, and we'll let them in as we go along. Right, let's go to the zoo. We're here today with Nick Dunn, who's the Animal Care Manager here at Wellington Zoo. Nick, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Really appreciate it. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how did you end up at Wellington Zoo?
Yeah, sure. So, as you say, I'm the Animal Care Manager here, which is a bit of a weird title because it makes it sound like I look after all the animals, and that's not entirely true. So I look after about 37 of the most difficult animals in the zoo, and that's the zookeepers. So it's the people that look after the animals. I grew up looking after animals. I was a zookeeper from the age of about 9, so I had a very bizarre childhood where I grew up in a zoo. So I've literally been doing it since I was way too young. Health and safety wise now, you'd never be able to do that, but back in those days it was okay. So I grew up being a zookeeper and then worked my way up through, being a curator and worked my way up the chain, if you like. And so I moved over to New Zealand about 2.5 years ago, and the opportunity to come here and look after the animal keepers and the animals at Wellington Zoo came up, and I jumped at it. So love Wellington, love the zoo, and love everything we stand for. So it was a really easy move for me to come from the UK over to here. Yeah,
It'd be a pretty rare job to see advertised in the paper, I guess.
Yeah, it is. But when you're in the zoo profession, you get to know people and you know what's coming up. So it was actually, I was over here visiting family, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, you might want to pop to Wellington Zoo. They're looking for someone." So I came along, and true Wellington style, had a coffee, had a chat, and then got told about the job. Wow. So yeah. Mum ran the pub and Dad ran the zoo in the village, and so I was always in trouble at school for animals in my backpack and things like that, because they needed hand rearing, so I couldn't just leave them. They needed food every 2 hours, so I used to sneak out of class and syringe feed a lemur or something. And then when I had to take them home at night, obviously there's laws around what you can have in food preparation areas, and so animals they don't figure in that. The kitchens weren't allowed it. So I used to hide things in the cellar, in the beer cellar, because Mum used to get really angry with me for bringing them home. So I used to hide them in the cellar. And I remember one day I had a bird in there, and it got out, and there was all this, I just heard this screaming, and it was Mum. She'd gone down and found the bird, and I was like, oh no, I forgot about it. And so anyway, so I used to get in quite a lot of trouble as a kid at the pub and at school. But yeah, it's a very bizarre childhood, but it was good fun. And there's a lot of those practices that we used to do back then which we don't do now. This is an evolving profession. We learn more all the time. Back in those days it was much more of a vocational thing, whereas now there's a lot of science involved in caring for animals, particularly in zoology. And so most of our keepers now are coming through with degrees and very highly educated, whereas back in the days a lot of our keepers, we'd be on YTS schemes and all of those, it was more of a manual job that you learnt on the job. So things have changed a lot even in my time, and of course I'm only like 22, so it's not been that long.
So you said you've got 37 other staff who look after, I suppose you have a specific team that looks after the tigers and so on.
Yeah, that's right. So we have, my team of animal care staff are split into 3. So we've got the people that looked after basically all of the birds and reptiles and invertebrates, and they're called the ectotherm bird team, which sounds grand, but they're the ones that look after our native species, all the birds, and also our creepy crawlies and our reptiles. And then we have a team that look after our primates. We've got quite a big selection of primates and monkeys here, including our chimpanzees, and that whole team is just dedicated to looking after those animals. And then we have our biggest team, which is our mammals team, which covers pretty much everything else. So that's all of our big carnivores, our small carnivores, and all of our hoof stocks, so things like the giraffe, that will come under the mammal section as well. It needs to be a big team, although it might seem there's not that many animals, you know, it's only 2 tigers or 2 lions. We have very, very strict rules around working with animals that are, you know, dangerous, high security animals. So we have to have at least 2 people working with those animals that they're able to, you can't even open a lock without 2 keys doing it, because, you know, we don't want any mistakes to happen. And when you're working with people, mistakes can always happen. So we put so many processes in place that means that our people and our visitors are completely safe from these animals which could pose a risk to you know, people's safety potentially.
So we're outside the tiger enclosure.
Yes,
We've got two Sumatran tigers.
We've got 2 Sumatran tigers, a male and a female. So we've got Bashi the male, who is just behind us here, and then we've got Senya the female, who's just behind the glass in here. She's actually just up behind the bamboo. She's just walked up that way. They're an incredibly endangered species. So a number of the species we have here at Wellington Zoo really rely on zoos and other conservation partners for their survival. Without some of the breeding programs and without some of the conservation initiatives, you know, in the forests where they come from, these animals would simply be extinct. So we're only a small part, but we're a really important part of a global network that's helping to protect these animals. And a zoo's particular expertise is, you know, husbandry and care. So we're able to manage the genetic population, if you like. So what we're often doing is managing a safety net population of this, whatever the species might be, ensuring that they thrive and ensuring that they have the best welfare possible, so that we can actually make sure that they've got the genetics available should we ever get to the point that we need to actually put animals back into the wild or repopulate the wild. And that has happened in a number of cases where there are species that are now back in nature only thanks to the work that have been done by zoos. Yeah, Senya has, unfortunately, she's got a number of different allergies, and it's amazing now what we can do with veterinary science, you know, the testing that we can do and the things that we can learn from blood or other tests that we can do. And early on when Senya came here, we discovered that there was something not right. You know, she was exhibiting all sorts of scratching and uncomfortable behaviours. And anyway, over a period of time with testing, we've discovered that she's allergic to a number of different things. So the keepers have actually trained her to participate in her healthcare, and it's one of the amazing things that we can do now with the keepers and the vets and nurses down at Te Kohanga, where we can actually get the lions to participate. So they'll offer us their tail for a blood draw and that kind of thing. They'll present their mouth or paws to be checked. And it means that we can put these special drops into Senya's mouth, which help with her allergies. So, yeah, she can, at different times of year, it can get worse. The same with our bear Sasa. You know, she's allergic to Wellington's environment, and it would seem. But it's nothing too serious, but we can make sure that they're as comfortable as they can be with different medications. Yeah. Okay.
Well, next we're here at the chimp enclosure.
Yeah, here at the chimp habitat.
They're all out today.
Well, 6 of them are out. There's another, there's a little baby up there I've just seen actually. So yeah, we've got 10 chimps in our troop here. Chimps form family groups called a troop, and they are a bit like any family. There's ups and downs, let's just say. They're very vocal, they're very wear their heart on their sleeve, and I think that's why I love all of the animals here at the zoo. But I guess if anyone wants to say what was your favourite, it would probably be one of the primates, and none more so than the chimps. They share so much in common with us, and their personalities and individual personalities all come out every day, and working with them is a challenge, but at the same time it's absolutely amazing to be a part of that whānau, part of that family.
Yeah. Obviously you can name them all.
Yeah.
You know them all.
Yeah, you get to know them all pretty well. It's just like me talking to you or any other people in our life. You know, we're all so different. You'd never confuse me with you, and neither would me or the keepers confuse any 2 of the chimps together. They've all got their own you know, looks and personalities, and definitely they've all got their own behaviours. So we've got some real troublemakers in the group, but we've also got some really calm, lovely ladies in there as well.
It all balances out, I suppose.
Yeah, it balances out, yeah.
And so they get on okay?
Yeah, they get on really well. I mean, as I say, it's all ups and downs. Chimpanzee troops are, you know, looked after, if you like, by the alpha male. And the alpha male needs to assert his dominance all the time, and so it can look pretty brutal. But, you know, it's part of chimpanzee life. And, you know, he needs to show everyone who's boss, and particularly those coming up through the ranks, those young males who try and push it, you know, and try and push their luck, then he needs to put them in their place and prove to all the other animals in the troop that he's the one that will look after them if anything goes wrong, if they need to defend their territory or, you know, their resources. So being an alpha is hard work. He's always on the watch, always on the lookout, and Lex is a really good dominant alpha male in our group, because as well as being that big bolshy dominant male, he's actually really caring and really lovely with the young chimps. So, you know, you can see him playing with the baby and stuff, and he's a really, really good dad. Yeah.
How old's the baby?
The baby is 3 years old now, I think, I want to say. Little Akita, yeah. So it's funny with chimps, they've got a little white fluffy tail when they're young, and that goes at about the age of 6, and you can see then that everyone goes, yeah, you're not a baby anymore, so you can't get away with so much, and they start having to toe the line and not get away with as much as they used to.
Yeah. Anything particularly special about caring for these chimps here in Wellington?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things to note with looking after chimps, and one is that they are so intelligent. With all the animals at the zoo, we want to make sure that they have a really good life and that we provide them with stimulation and variety and, you know, make sure that everything's cared for. With chimps, they're so intelligent, that goes up a level, so we have to make sure that they're given the opportunity to perform natural behaviours. So, you know, these guys use tools, they're really developed, and they're really smart, so we have to be able to replicate that in human care, and we do that in a number of ways. Even chimps that have been born in human care, if you put in a situation that's similar to something in the wild, they'll work out how to do it. So one of those things is fishing for termites. If you give them the right equipment, bits of little stick and stuff, they'll fashion them down and they'll stick it down into tubes and pull out insects or yogurt or whatever it is you put at the end of the tubes. So they're really smart, and they keep the keepers on their toes all the time. The other thing we have to be really careful of as well is safety, because they're about 5 times stronger than us pound for pound. Wow. So they can be very, very dangerous. You know, historically people have kept these animals as pets, or you used to be able to have your photo taken with them on the beach and things, or, you know, people used to do all sorts, like chimp tea parties. And that's actually very risky just from a human safety point of view, because they're quite unpredictable. And even if you've hand-reared a chimp and it seems like it's your baby or it's, you know, part of your family, those animals are wild animals, and they can always be unpredictable, and they could pose a real risk to humans. Very, very strong, big teeth, very powerful arms. So we have to be very mindful about our staff safety working with them. So nobody works in with the chimps. It's all done through protected contact. So again, a bit like the tigers, we ask the chimps to participate in their own healthcare. So for these guys, they were all trained to have their COVID vaccines, which we can do safely through the mesh. They're able to have their temperatures taken. We have all sorts of trained behaviours where they show us their hands, their arms, and all different bits of them, so we can check them out. And that way the vets can keep a close eye on them as well.
We're here at Te Kohanga, the nest.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us what goes on here at the nest?
Yes, so Te Kohanga is our veterinary hospital. It's a pretty amazing building and a pretty amazing place here in the zoo. Unlike most veterinary hospitals in a zoo, this is all completely on show to visitors. So normally in a zoo, the veterinary hospital would be way out the back through a lot of gates and everything that people can't see what's going on. But we want our visitors to be able to see what we're doing here on a daily basis. And the stuff we do here on a daily basis is quite incredible and very varied. So one of the main things that happen here at Te Kohanga is the care and looking after of our native wildlife. So that can be brought into us by different organisations or members of the community, and we get an awful lot of birds coming through here every day, every week. And those birds are looked after by our vets and vet nurses, and where possible, obviously then taken back and released back into the wild. So that's a really huge part of what we do here at the nest. And that can range from everything from a fantail to an albatross, and we even had a big penguin in here once. Yeah.
So plus also you care for obviously the animals here in the zoo. Do they come and have annual checkups and things like that?
Yeah, a lot of the animals do. Young, healthy animals, we tend to give them their health checks in their habitats. It really depends on the animal and the need for that health check. But the vets and the keepers train our animals to participate in their health care, but that doesn't always work at the habitat. And so sometimes they need to be popped into a crate or into something safe, popped into our veterinary ambulance, driven down here to Te Kohanga, and then under anaesthetic, the vets can have a really good look at them. So that could be anything from a really good check of their teeth, particularly as they're getting older, or it could be their eyes or something internal, or something even more like, x-rays or ultrasound. For things like our Tasmanian devils, they are prone to getting cancerous tumours when they get older. And so when they do get older, we need to give them quite regular sort of diagnostics to check that there isn't cancerous tumours growing. So there's quite specific things for quite different animals, yeah. And we're able to do pretty much all of that here.
So how can people get involved in the zoo, like contribute, donations or volunteer?
Sure, well we really pride ourselves on being a part of the community, and that's in many ways. So we're a not-for-profit organisation, so we are a charitable organisation that people can make donations to. And that doesn't have to be financial donations. It does go a long way to helping us do our work here at Te Kohanga and looking after the animals in the zoo. But also you could volunteer your time, and we have a wide range of people that volunteer here with us, and in all different areas, and people bring their skills to us which are invaluable. There's a number of ways you can help out, visiting us. You can go on our website where there's you're able to donate on there, and around the zoo there's the ability to tap to donate as well. So there's a number of different ways that you can help us here.
Cool. Nick, really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Tell us about you.
Yeah, this wasn't a dangerous animal. This wasn't me in a fight with a bear or anything. But it was caused by a flamingo. But it was a flamingo scooter. I fell off, so it wasn't any of the animals here. I can't blame anyone here. And they didn't fix me up here. That was a human doctor that did that.
Thank you, Nick.
Pleasure.
Thank you for hosting us. That was fantastic. A great trip to the zoo. We really enjoyed it.
Good.
Just hearing some of the behind the scenes stuff there. So thank you. So we've got some questions for you, Nick.
Go ahead. Yep.
All right. First question. Pandas are really cute and cuddly, and so we love them. What animal isn't high on the cute and cuddly scale, but they have stolen your heart?
I think for the animals here at the zoo at Wellington, I think it's probably our lace monitors. So they are, one of the biggest lizards in the world. They're from Australia. Ours are currently about 6 feet long, and they're really impressive. They're great big lizards. That they're prehistoric. They're just under the size of a Komodo dragon. So they're pretty intimidating things, but they've really stolen my heart because they've just got amazing personalities. They're really intelligent. And I've never really worked with them very much before. And we've built a new habitat for them here. And just watching him explore that new habitat has been really good. So, yeah, I think they've probably stolen my heart. And they're definitely not cute and cuddly. They're sort of 6 foot of scaly muscle. That, and I think also tuatara, because tuatara are just so unique and so special. And we have a number of tuatara here, and we're returning a lot back to an island. So we're actually sort of repopulating an island with some tuatara. So they've stolen my heart a bit because they're just such unusual prehistoric animals. Yeah.
Fantastic. Which are the most well-behaved and least well-behaved animals at the zoo currently?
The most well-behaved is one of our chimpanzees, Jess. She's my favorite, so I would say her. She's the most well-behaved. She'll work with us all day long. She's really good at keeping the others in tow as well. So sometimes the chimpanzees get hold of things that they shouldn't. So they might, break something off or get hold of something they shouldn't have. And Jess, we actually ask her to say, "Can you go and get that, Jess?" And she'll actually go and get it for us. And she'll take, if someone's taken a nut or bolt or something like that, she'll actually go and get it off them and bring it back to us. So she's probably the most well-behaved animal in the zoo. She's a very, very good lady. She's the same age as me as well. We've got a bit of a bond.
22, is it?
She's 22. Has been for a while. And sorry, what was the other one? The most naughty?
Least well-behaved, naughtiest.
That's probably a toss-up between Kitway, which is one of the younger male chimps. He's just a teenager at the moment, and if you can imagine a naughty teenage boy but in a chimpanzee form, that's Kitway. And he loves nothing more than just causing trouble and riling the others up and trying to get a reaction. Either that or Sonny, who's the male giraffe, because Sonny is he's lovely, but he gets very excited around the girls, and he doesn't know when to stop. He's been a really good dad to Nia and everything, but he just can't help himself, and he doesn't know when to stop. So probably out of those two, and of course it's normally the boys that are the naughty ones. Yeah. Always
the boys. Now let's see, we've got a one in the chat here. This is from Margaret. Hi Nick, when we were youngsters in the 1950s, before a trip to the zoo, our mum would send us out to collect puha, which we took there in a shopping basket. Herbivores and omnivores alike were really keen. I recall a monkey dropping the peanuts he had been given by other kids to get the best snatch at some puha. Animal food and feeding has moved on a lot since then, but what is your take on the enthusiasm we saw?
Well, particularly, that was a big learning curve for me, actually, because, a lot of the animals rely on browse, so different species of trees and branches and things, and some of them need it exclusively, like the giraffe. And I thought, actually, I don't know much about native New Zealand browse, like species. So that's been a bit of a steep learning curve for me. But you're right. They, like our Kia, for example, we've had some Kia that have not been very well lately, and they went off their food. We gave them some coprosma that was in full berry, and they just started eating again because it was something that's natural to them. And so there's a lot to be said for that. And whilst we learn all the time, and there's new science about nutrition, and we can work out the macronutrients of what they need, and pellets like we do with our dogs and cats now, it's all complete feeds. Nothing compares to what nature can provide for them, because that's what they've evolved to eat.
Okay. Someone's asked, what were you doing just before you came to work for Wellington Zoo? You came here on a holiday, but what were you doing before that in the UK?
So I was the welfare and conservation manager for Europe's biggest primate rescue centre. So it was a place called Monkey World in Dorset in the UK, and we've had for 20 years a long-running TV show. Even it was a huge organisation rescuing primates, and the reason it started was a lot of places in Europe, like in Spain, used to have. You'd go to a beach and you'd be able to have a photograph taken with a baby chimp and things like that. And that's where it started from, was rescuing those animals and putting them back into a normal family situation. It expanded on from that, and we ended up taking a lot of primates, small monkeys that were in the pet trade in the UK. We had animals from all over the world in the end, all different kinds of species of primates. And so that's what I was doing before this. So we also had work projects in Vietnam and Brazil as well. So we'd be looking after species in the wild as well. But predominantly what we did was looking after rescued primates and rehabilitating them.
we talked a bit about Te Kohanga, the nest, and we had some shots there of some native birds that were being helped there. And someone's asked, where's the question here? What should we do if we find an injured native bird? Interesting question.
Okay, so if it's an injured bird, we need to get it to the vets. So if you're in Wellington, you can call Te Kohanga, and we'll take it. So we'll organise that. You can always talk to the SPCA, and they'll arrange bringing it here as well. But we're really probably the best equipped in the area here to be able to look after any money that you might find that is injured. If it's at the time of year when birds are breeding and it's a juvenile, like a fledgling, the best thing to do is actually leave it where it is, because normally when they've just come out of the nest like that, the parents are around and they'll be feeding the baby. It looks like it's fallen out of the nest, but it probably hasn't. So the best thing to do if you find a young one is to absolutely leave it where it is. If you're worried that someone's cat or something like that might get it, that's unfortunate, but the best chance of survival for those youngsters are leaving them where they are for their parents to look after them. But any other injured bird, if it's a seabird or something else, then get hold of the SPCA or get hold of us directly, and we'll take it in and fix it out.
Cool. Annie's asked an interesting question as a result of the video, and this is something that I was thinking about later on. You talked about training the primates and large cats to participate in their own healthcare. She's saying, how do you do that? How do you train them to do that? Positive
reinforcement. It's as simple as that. You find out what they like. So normally that's a food reward. It's a bit, I don't know if you ever see, like you see where the dog shows on the TV, where the dogs, like the police dogs or anything else, can be trained to do unbelievable things. And it's just about rewarding them when they do something. And so what we'll do, it's called shaping a behavior. And so we'll have a cue. So for instance, if sometimes we need to see a chimpanzee's bottom, so that's the cue for that. And it's a behavior that they do sort of in play. And you do that. And when they do the behavior, you bridge with a little clicker or a whistle. So, okay, I've done something that you wanted me to do. And then you reward them. So that could be in a dog, it could be, with a toy or a cuddle or a pet. But normally with the animals here, it's a raisin or a bit of banana or something like that. So we have a long process of shaping new behaviors and then maintaining behaviors that we need those animals to do. So, for example, we can do this and say ear, and then the chimp will be able to put their ear up to the mesh and we can pop in one of those digital thermometers. But it just takes time, and some behaviors take longer than others. So, for instance, with the ECG monitoring we do, where the chimp has actually got to hold 2 fingers on an ECG monitor, that's quite a long thing for a chimp to do. And they're like, I'm bored now. So you have to try and keep their attention going and make it worth their while. If they do that they'll get a decent reward. So it's as simple as positive reinforcement.
So this is another interesting one. How do your staff get supported after the death of one of the animals? They must get fairly attached.
Yes, we do. And it's really interesting, actually, because on my other screen here, I've just had a thing through from the United States where they've just done a study from a university about how zoo professionals and volunteers deal with mental health issues around loss and burnout. And I think in any caring industry, whether it's with humans or with animals, when you have people who work in an industry that experience loss regularly, then it does have a cumulative effect as well as, just those one-offs. And it can take its toll. And so, we're just very open and honest with each other on our team here of animal care, that we look after each other and we check in with each other. And, particularly if you're working on dangerous animals and you're feeling emotional in that way, we'll swap you out. We won't force you to work on somewhere that you feel uncomfortable. Similarly, if you've been working with whoever it is and, one of the group dies, if you need a break from that group for a little while, then we can organise that for you and we'll swap you out. But some people don't like to do that. They like to get back in and carry on working with that family. Everyone deals with it differently. And so we're just really mindful that we support each other in however that looks for that person.
You talked about at the beginning, you're looking after the 37 most difficult animals zoo, the zookeepers. How does one become a zookeeper? My daughter wants to become a marine biologist. Someone else in the office, I think, had a niece or something that wanted to become a zookeeper. How would they become? What steps would they take?
So there is an animal management course you can do in New Zealand, and that's through Unitec. And it's a really good course, actually. It's different in whatever country you're in, but the one here in New Zealand is the Unitec course. And part of that course is you actually come and do a work placement at a zoo like Wellington. The other big zoos around New Zealand take placements as well. So we have 6 students every year that are on that course. And they come to us. It's partly, college learning and then partly on the job training. And they come to us for 1 day a week, and they have like a red book that they complete. And there's an assessment at the end of that period. And more often than not, those students will then end up in roles within zoos. Some of them decide that they might end up in a slightly different role, but most of them do end up doing that zookeeper role. So that's one way of doing it. And then of course there are doing university or college degrees in zoology or ecology, animal management, and people go about it that way. It's a much broader way of getting into it than there used to be, but there are still very limited amount of jobs. And so historically, I remember one recruitment drive back in the UK for one keeper role. I had over 200 applicants. It was a highly sought after job, and there's not that many. And for a long time, people will volunteer or do internships and things just to get their foot in the door. Yeah.
You must have one of the most unique jobs in New Zealand, I think. There'd only be 2 or 3 others of doing a similar job to you, wouldn't there?
Yes, there are. There's me, Mark, and Warren. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's not many of us, I guess. I never thought of it like that. Yeah.
Yeah, incredibly unique. This is a good one. What makes a habitat interesting to the animals, and who decides how the enclosures are designed or the habitats are designed?
That's a really good question. Depends on the species as to what makes it interesting for them. We try and make the habitats as natural as possible. And that doesn't mean that you look at them and think, oh, I'm in Brazil, you fooled me. It just means that we give the animals those essential parts of the habitat that they need to thrive and be healthy. So, obviously, if it's a monkey, we need to be able to give them something that they can climb and be high up in the trees. If it's an animal that likes to bury and hide, like a reptile, then we need to replicate that. So when we manage things like the reptiles, we have them in a fairly small contained thing. And so we can really replicate the heat, the humidity, and all of that kind of stuff, even the UV levels that they see. And then with the larger animals, we need to make sure that they're complex and that they can exhibit, all of those behaviors that they would normally do. It's interesting when people look at zoo habitats and say, well, they'd have miles and miles and miles of the savannah to roam. And the sort of counter argument for that, and I agree, but the counter argument for that is a lot of these animals will roam for miles and miles and miles because there's such a lack of resources and they need to. And it's actually exhausting for them to have to patrol that territory or defend that territory. And so often you'll put an animal in a situation, not that ours have come from the wild, so it's, they've been born in human care. But if they've got a smaller territory, they'll feel safer. It's easier for them to defend it. So there's a lot of considerations that it's not all about the size, it's about the complexity of it. And who designs it? Well, it's actually a group effort. So every time we have a new habitat to be built or designed, it's normally myself and a number of the keepers who are involved in those animals, but it's also our visitor experience team, it's our maintenance team, it's our health and safety lead. So we have all of these people involved in designing habitats because we really want to make sure that they are suitable and the best they can be for our 3 customers. And that's what we call them here. So our 3 customers are us, the staff. So is it suitable and safe for the staff to work in there? Is it suitable and is it going to be a good experience for our visitors? and then most importantly, of course, is it suitable, and is it going to be the best it can be for the animals that we're intending to live in there? So what I'm saying is the answer to that. It's a long answer, sorry. It's a group effort when we design the new habitats. So it's not just me doing a drawing on the back of an envelope. No.
Ordering some plants from the local plant store.
Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention our grounds team are involved as well. Yes, because they do all of the planting. Yes.
So they'll be sourcing plants from all over the world.
No, all from New Zealand. We don't necessarily have to plant species, and they won't always grow, of course, So the grounds team, I'll often go out with Nathan from the grounds team. We'll go to nurseries and we'll think, well, actually, that's a kind of like the look that we're going for. That's an acacia, which, that would sort of be what the nearest thing is to what we'd get on the savannah. And interestingly, one of the things that Nathan and I have been trying to source for ages is Queensland bottle trees. Which look, so you may well know them. They've got these big fat trunks on them, and they used to call them prison trees because they become hollow in the middle, and they used to keep prisoners in them, apparently. But they're the nearest thing that we can get over here to a baobab tree, which is something that grows in Madagascar. So we've been trying to source these trees for our lemur enclosures because they're the nearest we can find to the baobabs. So yeah, there's a lot goes on in those. Normally me finding something on Google saying, could you find this, please?
Last question, might be the most difficult. What do you do with all the poo?
Yeah, there's a lot of poo. It depends on the poo. So if it's a herbivore poo, like from the giraffe, and there's a lot of that, then that actually gets collected by a company called Zoo Poo. So some of you might even have it in your compost at home. So we do actually, well, we don't. The company actually sells that in some garden centres around Wellington. But then for other things like the carnivores and the primates and everything, because there's a biosecurity risk to whatever comes out of them, then that all goes off for incineration. That's all dealt with that way. So there's a number of different things that happen with the poo. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and we just really appreciate that you've taken the time to show us around the zoo, give us a little bit of a tour and an insight into what happens in, I think, one of Wellington's best attractions, best places to be, for sure.
Yeah, it's lovely. And the gardens are so beautiful as well. It's a nice day out just to wander around. Well, if it's sunny, that is. It's a nice day to wander around the gardens, if nothing else.
Yeah. Really appreciate your time. Don't forget you can support the Wellington Zoo by making a donation. You can also volunteer, as Nick said in the video. So do go along to the website and have a look if you want to support the zoo in that way. And of course, the other way to support is to go along and have a visit. And see some of these animals that Nick has been talking about. Thank you again, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you again.
Sure. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you at the next month's Curious Conversations.